All right, it is time to shine. It is time to shine. Welcome to all of those who are listening in, whether you're on the Wisdom app, whether you're on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter, or even LinkedIn. We appreciate you coming back to hear the Run the Jewelz podcast show and vidcast series episode that we have locked and loaded for our season 4 episodes. I'm your host, Julian Smartrimple, King Jewelz here, ready to drop a ton of other jewels that we can give you all for today's episode. You're in for a treat. For those who are just listening for the first time, if you're just tuning in, you are officially inducted as being one of our Smart Jewel listeners to the RTJ show. But we just want to let you know what we are about. The RTJ Lifestyle Show was created to spread inspiration to young professionals and millennial entrepreneurs who want to learn wisdom on how to shine brighter in their careers or their businesses. And so, especially for young professionals or entrepreneurs and millennial and Gen Zers, even if you're a baby boomer or any of the generations, the alpha generations after Gen Z, we appreciate y'all rocking with us for today's episode. You can definitely find a way, if you have what it takes, to sign up with one of our interest forms to be a part of our RTJ lifestyle show and podcast series by just clicking the link that is below in the comment section. You will be able to have our team look at your interest form and see if you fit our mission and also our vision for the RTJ show. And we appreciate all of our shining VIP jewels who have been a part of our podcast series this season. Again, you heard you can listen to us on Wisdom Clubhouse. We just officially got on Clubhouse recently, and then on all listening podcast platforms that you listen or stream your favorite podcasts or your music artist, that just search for the Run the Jewelz podcast. And you'll be able to see our episodes from season 1 all the way now to season 4, you all. And so we've been putting in work over the last few seasons. And so go and check us out to see what we've created over the last 3 seasons. But I'm excited, you all, for my very special guest. We're keeping the show rolling with a lot of financial education. Throughout the last few episodes, we've been talking to young professionals and entrepreneurs who are dropping a ton of jewels about financial education and financial freedom hacks and also strategies. And so if at any time, if you're tuning in, you have any questions from our very special guests, especially to our wisdom listeners behind the scenes getting exclusive access to our content right now, you can come onto the stage and ask my guests any questions, or you can type them in the chat below in order to get any questions that you may have on today's subject answered to the best of my guest's ability. And so without further ado, let me get ready to bring my guest on. The title of today's episode is How to Crush Debt by Finding and Funding Your Passion. Again, the title today is How to Crush Debt by Finding and Funding Your Passion. You're in for a treat with this dynamic queen who I came across. She was actually being interviewed on another podcast on YouTube, the Bigger Pockets Money podcast. So shout out to YouTube and all the podcasters and creatives having their shows on YouTube. But she had a dynamic testimony and a dynamic story about how she was able to crush debt by finding and also funding her passions. And so you're going to be in for a treat to hear from Tiffany Grant. Money Talk with T is what her handle is that she goes by. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Miss Tiffany Grant. Tiffany, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. We appreciate you coming on to Run the Jewels with us for today's episode, Tiffany. And what we usually do to start off our episode, if you could tell those who are listening, Tiffany, about where you're originally from, where you're tuning in from today, and why this is an important subject for you to discuss with us today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm originally from New York, Westchester to be exact, and no, that is not upstate. To those that are in the city, I always get that. I'm from White Plains, so it's like 30 minutes from the Bronx. But right now, I live in North Carolina, and that's in Greensboro, which I love. It's beautiful here. This is important to me because as a community, right? And so I'm talking about the Black and Brown community. We need to get our monies right, okay? So I started talking about money back in 2017. I started the blog, and my whole mission is to educate people as much as possible. So I focus on financial education and literacy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's always something that we need to, especially that look like myself and you, Tiffany, to share the best practices because we still got to be able to build our communities and also build up our families with proper financial literacy and education, just as you said. And so, shout out again to those that are listening on Wisdom, or if you're catching us live here, I'm here with my very special guest. Tiffany Grant, Money Talk with T, who's going to be talking to us about how to crush debt by finding and funding your passion. And so, Tiffany, let's start from the ground zero. Let's start from the bottom. And shout out again to New York City. I know, Tiffany, my mom is from Queens and also born in Bed-Stuy. So we give big ups to all of the New York residences and citizens up top. But how did you even want to, Tiffany, start in the financial education industry or in that lane? Like were you introduced to it by family members? Were you introduced by a certain book that you read? Like what got you on that track?
Yeah, so it's funny because what got me on this track was seeing what not to do from my family. I've come from a family of spenders. They love to spend money. So, growing up, it was great because, I get whatever I want. But as I got older, and especially during 2008, 2009, I saw how overspending could be detrimental to your finances. So all of my immediate family went through bankruptcies and even foreclosures at times. So I was like, you know what? I do not want to go this route. This is not the life I want. And so that's when I started saying, you know what? You don't know what you don't know. Your parents and stuff, they don't know what they don't know. And so you have to go out and consciously obtain this knowledge. That's why you're listening to this podcast right now. You have to consciously go out and obtain this knowledge. So that's what I did, starting at a pretty early age. I think I was maybe in eighth grade or so, eighth or ninth grade. And I was like, okay, I want to start reading like Money Magazine, Kiplinger Personal Finance. I used to listen to a lot of finance podcasts. I would read blogs. I'm definitely a nerd. So when I find something that I like and I'm interested in, I will dive all the way in. And so at the age of 16, I became one of those extreme couponers. Like I would go into the grocery store and have a cart full of stuff and only pay like $20. And for me, instead of spending being a high, now it was saving was a high for me, right? And so that's kind of what started that trajectory. So as time goes on, I ended up being a teen mom. So I had my son at 18. So I was pregnant at 17, had him at 18. And it was from that moment on, I said, okay, Tiffany, you really got to get your life together. Like you good at saving, but the rest of the stuff, you kind of got to get it together because now you have a whole little person that's going to depend on you for the rest of your life and their life. And so that's kind of when I really jump started getting into and actually enacting some of the stuff that I had already learned. And then from there, family, friends, people close to me, they would always ask me financial questions because they knew I knew what I was talking about. And once they started doing that, I was like, if one person has this question, it's probably hundreds of people that have this question. Let me create a blog. And so that's when I created the Money Talk with Tiff blog, and the rest is history.
I love it. Blogging is a wave that a lot of financial educators and even financial creators are on right now. And so big up to you, Tiffany, for creating a blog, especially to track your journey. I know it's much easier even to pivot into blogging or even into any type of channel that you may have access to videos and content. So shout out again to all of those bloggers and bloggers out there. And so I know it even is very interesting because I know when I talk to other guests, they exactly, like you mentioned, Tiffany, have to make a decision. They have to make a decision for their family, they have to make a decision for their children or their children's children in order to establish a firmer and also more solid foundation, especially when it comes to finances. And so,
Mhm.
were there any, we always like to suggest any books or any individuals that may be financial gurus that you were learning from too along the beginning stages? Not right now, because we know you're farther along, but who were you looking at or what were you reading content wise at the beginning?
Oh, absolutely. So many. But my top two, right? So, well, let's say top three. So, Susie Orman. So, Susie, if you're listening, please come on my show. I love you. So, I used to watch her show faithfully every Friday. The Susie Orman show, I used to love it. Like, I would sit there and just binge and watch her show and just get all of that information from her. Then, as I started going along on my journey, Dave Ramsey, super popular. I used to listen to his podcast sitting at work to the point where my coworkers knew the because I would literally listen to it all day long. And then also, I want to shout out Clark Howard because that's another person that I listen to their podcast like every day on my way to work. So on my way to work, I would listen to Clark, and then when I got to work, I would listen to Dave. But Clark Howard is also phenomenal, and he'll actually be a speaker at FinCon this year. So I'm super excited about that. But those three people, as far as listening and watching wise, those were the people that I kind of tuned into. Now, when we're talking about books, the book Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robbins was life changing for me. Also, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. That one was phenomenal for me. And then, of course, the tried and true, how to win friends and influence people. That was helpful in getting into this. And then also Think and Grow Rich, Millionaire Next Door. I could go on, but there's a ton of books and material. And then back when magazines were popular, because now they don't even exist, which I'm sad about. But Money Magazine, like I mentioned before, and Kiplinger Personal Finance, they're still online, but I used to get the magazines, subscribe to those, and read every single one and pull out what I could. So there has been a lot of like places I pulled information from. And that also goes to say the information is out here, y'all. You just got to find it, right? But what I did notice is in this industry is dominated by white older males, right? And so I was like, well, you know, since I do have this knowledge and I actively went out and seeked it, people started coming to me as a black young female because I do not check any of those boxes. And I was like, okay, this is a way that I can have an impact on my community is to take what I know and then just distribute it out in a way that's super clear and relates to us.
Yeah, no, that's some of the gurus that I've even followed, Tiff and Dave and Susie. But yeah, I literally didn't see people that looked brown and also with the melanin, like myself and yourself, that were teaching finance. They were on the speaking trail, but they weren't actually teaching solely financial education as a guru. That they were known for financial literacy, and so that's a major inspiration that you just mentioned right there, Queen. For those who are our wisdom listeners, if you have any questions for my very special guest, Tiffany Grant, feel free to come onto the stage. If you have any questions on the subject matter that we are discussing for today's episode, how to crush debt by finding and funding your passion, feel free to come up at any time. But Tiffany, I know when it came to literally being a spokesperson for the community or for the culture even, which is what we call it a lot in the black and brown communities. Like, how did you see people's mindset shift when you started crushing debt on your journey and they were like actually seeing your baby steps or seeing your step-by-step process and like actually being inspired or motivated? Like, how was that transition for your friends or your family circles?
So I'll be real with you. When I started the blog or when I started the business, what's now a business, I didn't think it was going to be anything, right? So I didn't go in with the idea like, oh my gosh, it's a business I'm gonna start. No, it was really just me putting my story out there. And I was like, you know what? If one person reads it, cool. At least I changed one life. I was not expecting it to kind of go the route that it did. And so honestly, like there's some family that still don't understand what I do. um, which is so crazy, but there's still family that's like, okay, what do you do, Tiffany? Like, I know you're not working, from what they see. So they're like, what are you doing? So, because I've been a full-time entrepreneur since 2019. So the transition, from my family and friend perspective, they always knew that they would come to me for information, but I don't think people really realized how big it was getting. Like even to this day, and even me, I don't even realize at times, but going throughout the journey, people saw how, oh, like Tiffany just bought a house at 26. What? She's a single mom of two boys. What? Like, how is she doing this stuff? And even at that time, I wasn't making that much, So it from the outside looking in, people are like, well, what's going on? What is she doing? And then they started tuning in a little more. They're like, okay, if a single mom of two boys can sit there and buy a house at 26, let me learn from her and see what she's doing, which I love because I'm like, the more we talk about money, which is why I named it Money Talk with Tiff, the better we are as a community and as a collective. If we don't have these conversations, then how are we going to improve and learn from each other? So my whole purpose of doing this is to take the taboo out of talking about money, because that's kind of where we go wrong, just not just as a community, but as a society in general. Growing up, nobody talked to me about money. It wasn't a kid's place. It was an adult thing, and kids shouldn't worry about that type of stuff. And unfortunately, what that does is it doesn't expose the kids to the information and knowledge that you may already have. Like, there's people out here that have knowledge, but they're not sharing it because they don't feel comfortable or confident in what they know. So that's why having these conversations are important, because I might say something, you's like, oh, I knew that, or I thought about that. And now that gives you the confirmation, like, yeah, okay, I do know what I'm talking about. Now you can talk about it more. You get what I'm saying? So now with my kids, we talk about money all the time. From a young age, early age, we're talking about budgets. We're talking about compound interest. We're talking about all of these basic concepts that even if they don't fully understand it, they're getting exposed to it. So that way they can already start changing, their trajectory and how they do things.
No, like you said, exposure is everything, Tiffany. I don't know if I mentioned I work like in the school system and also outside of the school system doing consulting and also just speaking and teaching the youth. And like that exposure, even from an elementary age, which I've recently started, excuse me, working in the most, their eyes start to light up when they start learning about financial education, even from an elementary age. And so I can't imagine the impact that you and others are making on the youth, especially even in your own household, by having those conversations with your children and even having them with others who are friends of your kids too. And so that's we want to definitely transition into a little bit deeper with that in one quick second. We're going to give you a quick commercial break to gather yourself. But each and every episode, we highlight a VIP sponsor for all of our podcast episodes. And so let's take a look and see who our VIP sponsor is for today's episode, you all. Let's take a look. shout out again to our VIP sponsor for today's episode, which comes from none other than Orgain Organic Protein. You can definitely purchase any organic and also vegan, plant-based friendly wellness products from Orgain Organic Protein. We even swear by it with our family and our network. Who is plant-based. And so you can receive an exclusive discount today with a discount code of SMART, SMART, JEWELZ at checkout. And you can go to the link that we're putting in the comment section right now to purchase your first Orgain Organic Protein product, whether you're into plant-based, whether you're into wanting to transition into a cleaner form of protein, and they have multiple products. Definitely go to visit Orgain Organic Protein today with the discount code of SMART, SMART, JEWELZ. But back to you, Tiffany. We definitely wanted to highlight our VIP sponsor really quick so we can let you drop a ton of more jewels with us. Tiffany is dropping a ton of jewels, you all, already for today's episode, how to crush debt by finding and funding your passion. But let's talk about the passion side to Tiffany, when it came to like finding how you could actually make a living and also monetize your passion. Like, what were some of the practical steps that you took into literally monetizing your passions that you have?
Gotcha. Yeah. So real quick, I wish I would have known Orgain was. I got some in the kitchen. I could have had like the. I got the chocolate back there. But anyway, yes, go into monetizing your passion. So I have always been an entrepreneur. Like from as little as I can remember. I want to say it was probably like 5 or 6, right? And that was my first business. I had Tiffany's Cafe. Now, I wasn't old enough to cook. So I'm like, okay, let me farm out the work to my grandma. Now, so, my grandma would make dinner and I would go to her and like, okay, what are we eating today? And then I would go type up a menu because my mom said I've been typing for a while. She had a desktop publishing business. But anyway,
Wow.
I would go type up a menu and then I would pass it around at dinner time, take people's order, go grab their order, bring it out. And then I would come out with my little piggy bank, and it would be like 10 cents for chicken, 5 cents for rice, whatever. It was good pricing. Like you would not find that pricing anywhere else. But I was also charging my family, which is another thing you should do. So anyway, that was my first business venture. And then just going along, like for instance, I remember in 7th grade, my business was buying and selling books on Amazon. Why? Because I was a reader. I love to read. And so I'm like, okay, how can I fund reading? I was like, okay, let me take the money my mom gave me, buy a book. Once I'm done, sell it back so I can buy the next one. You know what I mean? So I started doing that. So then moving forward, another business I had when I was 16 was making and selling cheesecakes because I love baking. My original trajectory was to go to culinary school. So I would go and bake some cheesecakes, take it to my job at the local CVS, have little samples for the customers. Luckily, my managers was like, oh yeah, go ahead. And I would get orders and I would sell cheesecakes. So everything that I've loved to do, I've always found a way to monetize it. And that's what I tell people. Start there. Start with writing down everything that you love to do. Okay. So, I say put 2 categories. One side, what you love to do, and then the other side is what you're good at. And then start trying to make those connections and see what actually lines up. Because I believe in, energy, and I believe in, I'm very spiritual. So the thing is, what we're supposed to be doing here on earth, we do get those downloads throughout our lives, right? But a lot of times we ignore it or we don't pay attention and we don't understand what it is. But you will know because that theme will still continue to come up throughout your life. So I tell people, like, because people come to me all the time, oh, Tiffany, I want to be an entrepreneur. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, what do you love to do? Because you don't want to do things just for money because you'll end up being miserable. I've been there, done that. I had a company where we made like a 500,000 last year in revenue, and I was miserable the entire time. Like it was not fun for me. And so I was like, I'd rather just do Money Talk, which doesn't make as much, but I am able to sustain and survive, and I'm able to have fun. So this doesn't feel like work. And I feel so much better doing that. So I tell people to start with what's important to you and what brings you joy, and then go from there, because it doesn't matter what you love to do, there is somebody out there that is willing to pay you for it. So with Money Talk, I do a lot of speaking, I freelance write, I take clients, I take one-on-one clients because I'm a accredited financial counselor. So I do more financial counseling stuff, getting into the mindset, budgeting, debt payoff, things like that. I have my podcast, which I have sponsors for. I have books. I have courses. I have t-shirts. I think I got one right here, actually. So, I mean, it just depends on what you love to do, and you can always find ways to monetize it. I didn't know, like, I'm late in the game on monetizing Money Talk because, like I said, I didn't think it was going to be a business. But now that I have started doing it, like, you'll be surprised how many different ways there are to make money out here. People will literally pay you for anything. So if you are thinking about starting a business, or you are thinking about being an entrepreneur, first start off with what you love to do. Then think about ways that you can monetize that. And there's so many different ways. And listen to podcasts like this, or like Money Talk with Tiff, where we're giving you ideas on how to monetize these things. Because there's so many different ways.
Tiffany is giving myself and you all who are listening all the jewels. We got to drop them jewels on Tiffany. She's giving y'all the playbook, you all. She said, even if she got started late in the podcast monetization space, she was already putting some of her passions into position to make money and to capitalize off of turning it into a business. And so, wisdom listeners, if you have any questions for Tiffany, feel free to come up on what is holding you back from not following your passions and not monetizing those passions into a business. And so that's what I wanted to transition into, Tiffany, because you were dropping a ton of wisdom and jewels on that particular response. Like, how did you combat like the failure complex of not basically having enough money to substantiate like you being successful from the beginnings of trying to monetize each of your passions, or even upgrading to a different passion if that original one was not making enough money for you to actually feel accomplished off of? Like, how did you fight that?
So, if you notice a theme throughout all the different businesses that I mentioned, it was using other people's money or abilities, right? Because my grandma, that was an ability, it wasn't really her money. I mean, technically, if you count the groceries,
Right.
but it was using other people's money to fund my passion, right? So, for instance, with the books, my mom gave me my first investment, to buy my first book. And then I kept turning it around and flipping it because I like to read. And I'm like, I want to keep this going. With the cheesecakes and stuff, right? I was still working, my part-time job. That's how I was able to keep funding my cheesecake business. As I got older with Money Talk, I was working an HR job when I started Money Talk, and I stayed, working in corporate America for a few years, like a couple of years, before I went full time and actually dove into it. So that's why I tell people too, you might see somebody's journey and you're like, oh, comparing their chapter 25 to your chapter 1. When it comes to entrepreneurship, it is a long game, okay? I just want to make that clear. Like, a lot of people, especially with the Great Resignation, they're like, oh, I'm going to just quit my job and I'm going to just go be an entrepreneur. I can tell you right now, it is hard. It is very, very difficult being an entrepreneur, full-time entrepreneur, because you don't have that steady income at the start, at the beginning, that you have with a job. So I tell people there is nothing wrong with staying at your job until you build up enough enough and build up the traction that you need to make this a long-term thing. Because I can tell you now, even recently, I'm like, shoot, I miss my 401k. I miss health benefits, being able to pay that through an employer because it's cheaper, So those are some things that you need to think about. And so I am a firm believer in using other people's money to fund your passion until it can sustain on its own. So don't let people guilt you into, oh, you need to quit your job. Oh, da 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 da. No, 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 no. Because this is not easy by a long shot, and I make sure I make that clear on my platform. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, and so you want to make sure that you have the financial plan in place. You want to make sure you have your mental in place, because this is a very, very mental thing as well. Some days I wake up and I'm just be real, because that's another thing we don't talk about is mental health. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, dang, I don't feel like getting up today. And it's usually on those days, which this is how I know it's God and the universe working, is usually on those days when I get a text like, oh, Tiffany, this happened. Or, oh, Tiffany, I just saw you on this. Or, oh, Tiffany, da, da, da. And then I'm like, okay, that's my confirmation. I need to get up. I need to get going. And I say that also to say, you have to find what you're passionate about, but you also have to find what gives you intrinsic motivation, right? So people reaching out to me saying that they paid off XYZ, or they found that, this blog article or this podcast episode was interesting, or my lives were interesting, whatever, or that helped them get to the next step in their journey. That motivates me, and that gives me intrinsic motivation because I know that I'm helping other people, right? So that's my intrinsic motivation. And also the other side of that is I want to make sure that I am a community leader and being a good resource for everyone else. And so that's my intrinsic motivation. It's not tied to money. It's not tied to money at all. It's tied to what makes me feel good. And so I also urge people to do that as well. Make sure that you have that intrinsic motivation to do what it is that you're doing. So that way, when the days get difficult, you don't feel like getting out the bed. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? That's the stuff that takes you through those big humps.
You dropping a ton of jewels right there, Queen. You're literally one of those responsible leaders, as we say in our community, that's not just in it for glorification of self. You're not just in it to make all the money in the world and keep it to yourself. It's all about sharing and spreading that information and that light and love into others' lives. And so that's a ton of jewels that Tiffany has given you all today. Go ahead.
Yeah, really quick. I'm like, look, y'all, I'm broke. No, I'm not going to say that because I do believe in, what we talk is what happens. But I don't make nearly as much as I used to make in corporate America. Okay. Let me just be clear. So that's how it's not about the money for me. It's about changing people's lives. Like it's a bigger purpose that's happening right now. That's how I'm able to keep my prices low. I'm like, as long as I can sustain and pay my bills, I'm happy. I'm happy. And people in my industry, they're like, Tiffany, like, how are you even making it? Like, when I tell them my prices and stuff, and I'm like, it's not about that for me. It's not about making money. As long as I can pay my bills, I'm good. And as long as I can change somebody else's life, I'm good. So if that's what makes me happy, then mind your business. No, I'm just kidding.
Stay with that point right there too, Queen. I know a lot of people get in a disgruntled state or literally unable to give up when, again, the dollars aren't adding up. Like, talk to us. How did you keep your overhead low? I know you have a young king that you're caring for, and even I know you have bills and potentially even had debts. I can't remember what you said in your previous interview, but how did you keep your overhead low so that you can still fund your passion? And even when you started monetizing the passion, how did you still keep that overhead low so that you can still put more money into the business?
Yes, great question. And I'm going to tell you one key to that, right? I am very, very frugal. I live very, very below my means. I do not like to spend money. And the most I spend on is technology because I am a tech nerd. But other than that, this outfit, I think was a hand-me-down from somebody.
Okay.
I go to the thrift store. I don't really spend that much money. So I tell people, even if you're working in corporate America or warehouse, wherever you work, don't allow lifestyle creep, which is when you make more, you start spending more, you make more, you spend more. I was living, even when I was making close to six figures in corporate, I was still living like I was making $10 an hour. You get what
Mm.
I'm saying? So everything, like my expenses are super low. And even at the time when I wanted to go full time entrepreneur in 2019, I said, okay, Tiffany, I had been budgeting already for a little bit, so I knew what my number was. And at that time, it was only $50 a day. So as long as I made $50 a day, I could sustain. So then that allowed me the freedom in my mind, right? Because I'm like, okay, for $50 a day, at that time I was also side hustling doing Uber and Lyft. I'm like, I can drive for like 2 or 3 hours and make my $50 a day. Why am I sitting at this job for like 8 or 9 hours, And I can still work on Money Talk after I get off, after I drive. So that's what gave me the confidence to make that next step, was knowing my numbers. So I encourage people to do that as well, making sure that, you are budgeting, making sure you know what you're looking at. And that's actually how I coach people on how to quit, or whether they're trying to move into full-time entrepreneur or whatever they're trying to do. I'm like, we got to know your numbers. That way you can see what you need to accomplish and how you're going to get there. And I even did this exercise with a current entrepreneur, actually a few days ago. I was like, okay, let's see what your expenses are. Then let's break that down to what your daily number is. And if you feel like that daily number is not attainable, let's cut down some expenses until we get to that dream number. You know what I mean? But then you can also look at it from an entrepreneur standpoint, where you can look at your number and you can say, okay, so if I break this number down, I can take on 2 more clients and get there, or I can do 2 more speaking engagements and get there. So it allows you to take these big goals and break them down into bite-sized pieces. And I'm going to say that is another key to my success, whether it was paying off debt or being an entrepreneur. I always, always, always take my big goals and break them down into bite-sized pieces and make it happen.
Yeah, we gotta have that opportunity, like Tiffany is saying, to bite one piece at a time instead of wanting to engulf a whole elephant, as the old adage says. Like, you gotta literally take one bite at a time, and also continue to move the finish line farther and farther away once you hit certain goals or certain metrics or benchmarks. And so, like, talk to us, Tiffany, as we get ready to transition down. Like, how did you set your benchmarks, or even set your budget? Did you use online tools? Did you do hand journal formats to track your goals or your budget, or even to track some of your benchmarks that you wanted to hit? Like, talk to us about your process. How did you hit those?
Yeah, so how much time do we have now? So with the process, okay, I'm trying to make this quick. So with the process, what I tell people is know yourself, know thyself, right? So know what's important to you, know what your mission is in life, know what your vision is in life, know what your values are. And then you can use those to kind of create your goals. Now, when you create your goals, I tell people, dream big for at least one of them. Dream big. Like with me, I'm like, okay, I want to be debt free by 30. Didn't
Mm.
make it, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I was like, I want to be debt free by 30. That's a huge goal, especially at that time when I'm looking at 50,000 plus. And so I was like, okay, that's my huge goal. What are the bite-sized pieces I can put under it? And so what I did was, I took every single debt that I had and broke it out individually. So it wasn't like student loans, this is the chunk. Credit cards, this is the chunk. It was like student loan 1, this is how much. Credit card 1, this is how much. And so I ranked them, and I did a combination of the snowball and the avalanche method. And I know we don't have time to get into that, but definitely look it up. I have an article on my blog about that, but I pretty much ranked them, and then I started knocking them out. And when I tell you, paying off and getting those paid in full letters in the mail, there is nothing like it. And then once I looked up, it was like, oh shoot, 50,000 is gone. Like, what? How did this even happen? But it was because I just kept playing games with myself. If I paid off one, let's say $1,000 one in a month or two, I was like, okay, let me see if I could take the next one and do it in 2 months, or let me see if I can do it in a couple weeks. And so I kept playing games with myself, and I was hustling hard. I was doing everything, because that's what I tell people too. When you have a goal and you're serious about accomplishing it, it's by any means necessary. No became my favorite answer for people asking me to go out, do this, do that. I said, no, 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 no. Because I have something that's important to me that I'm working on. I can do that later. You know what I'm saying? So, and then I was hustling as much as I could just so I can keep that going and make sure that I stayed on track. So when you have something, this goes back to the intrinsic motivation. When you have something that means a lot to you, and this is going back to knowing thyself, then you will have an any means necessary attitude and you will get it done. So that's why I tell people, when you're creating your goals, make sure they speak to you on the inside too. Don't just look at it thinking that's what I'm supposed to do. No, do what feels good. And in that way, you'll be able to stick with it and any means necessary, get it done.
Absolutely, because a lot of people, like you said, Tiff, they literally don't have the plan ironed out, or don't have literally a foundation for where they are wanting to go, and so
Mhm.
they're just literally shooting darts in the dark, or shooting bullets in the dark, and not having any targets to hit. And so I'm glad, like you mentioned, especially with your services and with your blog, that you do show people how to meet their targets and to not get overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
that's something, like, even as we transition into the last question before our final jewel, like what are some of the things that you see happening, let's say, within our community, especially of Black and brown people? Do you see like more eyes and more ears and more minds starting to be awakened towards like the financial education, and not living above their means, not basically living in full and lovey-dovey with debt? Like, where do you see things transitioning now that more people, especially of color, are starting to speak up about financial literacy and financial freedom?
Yeah, I think, like, not just in our community, but just as society in general, COVID sat us down. Okay. So when COVID came around, and that's what I was grateful for. Like, I hate that people got sick and died and things like that, but it was good in the way that it sat people down and it made them realize what was really going on in their life, because we're constantly on autopilot. We're just going, right?
Mhm.
And like you said, we're just going. Most of us don't even have targets to aim at, so we're just going with life, trying to figure things out. And COVID said, wait a minute, I'm gonna sit you down. You're not going anywhere. And so people started paying attention to their money, paying attention to their family, paying attention to their house. They're like, oh, this needs to be repaired, this needs, and they started paying attention to the little things that they didn't pay attention to before. So with that being said, I feel like a lot more people are tuning into their money and what's going on, which is great. Like, I'm like, yes, yes, finally, come on, y'all. But it's like people are starting to pay more attention. So with that being said, I have seen a lot of people, especially focus on buying houses and things like that. And so it's definitely something that I do see a change coming. And y'all, honestly, as a community, we need to spend less, okay? We need to spend less. I saw a stat not too long ago where it said the Black community has enough wealth to equal the GDP of Canada. We have the wealth. It's not an earning problem, it's a spending problem. And so we need to make sure that we get that under control so we can make more progress as a community.
That's real. We definitely are in the billions in spending, but again, we got to look at what are we doing for our communities and our households, especially because it starts with your family and also yourself first. And
Mhm.
so, Tiffany, you dropped a ton of jewels, Queen, but we've reached our final segment where we allow our special VIP guest to leave a final jewel of wisdom with the audience. We've talked about your journey in getting into financial education. We talked about early sacrifices that you made for you and your son, and even for your legacy. And we talked about how you progressed into monetizing your passions in order to literally survive and thrive. What would be a final jewel, Tiffany, that you would want to leave with the audience out of all of those subjects we discussed today?
Well, I think the main thing is to budget. Now, if budget is a tricky word for you or it's a triggering word for you, call it a money manifestation tool, call it a cash flow state, whatever you want to call it. But that has been just throughout my life, that has been life changing for me because it gave me the clarity to make the moves that I needed to make or to make the moves that I wanted to make without having that fear, without having the guilt associated with different things. That is what has helped me. Just having a plan in place and a budget, or whatever term you want to use. It's literally a plan every month. You're telling your money where you want it to go, and so that way you have no choice but to succeed as long as you follow it. So it's kind of like a fail-proof action plan. As long as you put it in place and then you follow it, the sky's the limit. So that is definitely what I want to leave the audience with as my final jewel.
I love it. I love it. That's an awesome final jewel. For those that are tuning in, you heard on Wisdom, you've heard on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter that you have to have yourself together in order to help others first. It's so many things that people do, as Tiffany said, that if you don't start with yourself first, you're not going to be of any help or any service to others, because your own house has to be built and your own house has to be in order first, especially for the parents out there, like Tiffany just pointed out. But Tiffany, we definitely want to have our audience tune in and support what you are doing. So how can they track with what you're doing in the near future? How can they stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at moneytalkwitht.com or at Money Talk with T on all social media channels. Literally everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. You can find me, Tiffany Grant, on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with any of you that would like to connect.
I love it. And for those that are tuning in, definitely go and rock and plug in to Tiffany's services at Money Talk with T on all social media platforms, Money Talk with T, and then also at moneytalkwitht.com. Go in and support this queen. She's someone who is definitely open and also willing to share her jewels of wisdom with you all. I know we'll even be tapping into some of your services, Tiffany, in the near future. And so we want to say a special prayer over you for taking the time out and coming on to our RTJ podcast show to share your jewels of wisdom with our audience, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Father God, I just want to thank you for allowing Tiffany to come on and share her knowledge and also share her story with our audience today. We thank you for, first and foremost, her son, Father. We thank you for her family, and also we thank you for her tribe and those who are sowing into her and also building her up as she continues to give and also relinquish unto others. We thank you for her business and also even her ministry that she is building up that is focused on sharing financial literacy and financial freedom tactics and strategies with other communities and even with our community. And we ask that you will connect her with even more resources, connect her with higher clients on different levels and international connections, that she can continue to build her business and expand the business. And we pray that she will be rejuvenated and be filled up for all that she's given. May you fill her up 100 plus fold until she continues to have her cup runneth over. I love you, Father. I praise you and I give you all the glory. And it's in Yahuwah HaMashiach's name I pray, the Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I appreciate you, Tiffany, coming on definitely to rock with us. If you have been blessed by today's episode with Tiffany, you all feel free to sow a seed with us. There's two ways to sow. You can cash app us at $SMART, SMART, JEWELZ, or you can become a monthly Patreon with us, which we just started for this season. And so shout out to all of our sowers and also sponsors and affiliate partners that you see at the bottom ticker on the screen. We could not have made this show a success, and also to purchase the equipment and also the service that we're using today, StreamYard, without you all who are rocking with us. And so shout out to you, Tiffany. I know we'll be in touch with you soon, Queen. Enjoy the rest of your day And thanks again for taking time out to share the jewels of wisdom with our audience.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
All right, peace, Tiffany. We'll be in touch, Queen.
Bye.
All right, peace. All right, you all. Thank you for staying locked and loaded for this part of our episode. We're just literally going to go through and share quickly about what we are doing for the RTJ show. We are winding down this season for season 4. And so take a look with myself and see what are some of the services that we are offering as we wind down season 4, you all. And so for those who are interested in starting their podcast or their live stream show, we are powered by Smart Jewelz Enterprises. And so if you are looking to create a podcast or live stream show, if you're looking to have technical assistance behind the scenes in making your live stream and also your podcast show be professional and also show the top tier class of what you are looking to host, if you're a virtual classroom creator for courses and content online or hosting online meetings or conferences, or if you're looking just to customize your brand, let's talk. You can visit us at www.smartjewelzenterprises.org. That's SMARTJEWELZ enterprises.org. And the secret to growth is hiding right in front of you. And so just click the link that we have below in the comment section or go to smartjewelzenterprises.org. Just as Tiffany pointed out, we just literally elevated our brand to the next level after our 200th episode, you all. So we now have merch. We now have our Shining Jewel collection that we just recently launched this month. And so shout out to all of our smart jewels who are rocking with us on our podcast, or even if you're following our community on Facebook or on YouTube, or even here on Wisdom. But you can purchase both men and women's tees, and we're even going to be launching some more products as we go throughout this year. And so go and visit our flow code page that we're putting in the comment section, or you can also go to www.smartjewelzenterprises.org to see our Shine Bright collection that we just recently launched. Also, we are taking our show on the road, you all, to start a new and innovative project for the next season titled the Smart Travel Jewels Podcast, where we're going to be going to different countries, different nations, and even different states here in the U.S. to interview dynamic young professionals and entrepreneurs, and to allow you to learn more about their culture, their economy, their passions, and also about literally their food. And so stay tuned with you all who are rocking with us and take a look at a preview of what's to come. So stay tuned, you all. We're going all the way to the nations as we already put out there from season 1. We're not playing this season. We're going to the nations, and I'm excited for what our team and also myself are, are producing for the next season. And so some final jewels for thought is to stop waiting on the perfect storm or stop waiting on the perfect wave. For those who are surfers, those who like going to the beach, you know how important it is just to get out there and swim and to get out there and enjoy the water that is beautiful in front of you. It is literally one of the most important parts of life, I feel, is being able to touch the water and also to touch the earth underneath the water. And so you got to be able to swim. And that takes a lot of courage, whether you physically know how to swim or spiritually know how to get wet. And so there is a difference. And so you have to stop waiting on the sidelines for the perfect time to get in the game, because now, if you haven't learned, life is short. If COVID has not taught us one thing previously, that we know that our time on this earth is short. And so it is literally the blink of an eye, where we could be here today, gone tomorrow, and no man or woman knows their time and when their clock is going to strike zero. And so what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the right finances? Are you waiting for the right team? Are you waiting for the right equipment? What are you waiting for? Because there's no better time than the present. You've seen us, if you've been tracking with us on the podcast or even watching us on the live show, track from season 1. We didn't have everything perfect or in alignment, but we still kept going. And we've been able to monetize the podcast. We've been able to go to different countries. We just came back from El Salvador, New Orleans here in the U.S., and we even are going to Asia this upcoming season that is ahead. And so we are going all over just with the idea of starting this podcast. And so just like Tiffany said, it's really about your hard work, dedication, and also your follow through, most importantly, about making your dreams a reality. So stay the course, make sure you plan and prepare for what's to come, and speak what life you want into existence. Speak like a king or a queen should, and open your mouth to share your jewels of wisdom with others. If you've been blessed again by tonight's episode, feel free to sow a seed with us. Cash app us at $SMART, SMART JEWELZ, or you can click the link in the comment section, or go to smartjewelsenterprises.org to get started on your podcast or live stream show today. Those are all of my final jewels for thought. King Jewel signing off. Stay hydrated, stay blessed, and don't be afraid to shine bright like the bright diamond jewel you've been created to be, because someone that is watching you needs to be inspired by the light that is within you, and also needs to feel the light and the presence that you have been given from Yah. And so shine bright like the jewel you've been created to be. Until we meet again, peace.